I think the biggest challenge is there's is an antiquated paradigm, an antiquated way of viewing the world. So the historical assumption has been that sort of thinking about a profitable venture is somehow completely antithetical and contradictory to making a positive difference in the world. That is the historical. That's been the historical sort of paradigm through which people have operated. So I think, in fact, that's the biggest impediment towards seeing, significant change is shifting that very basic, often unconscious assumption. I think there's reason to be optimistic in terms of what's going on in the private sector. So, at one end of the extreme in terms of sort of large global players, I think a really interesting example is Unilever. Paul Pullman is the CEO at Unilever. They've been very clear that their intention is to decouple their top-line revenue growth in the company from their environmental impact. He's also been very clear that they are thinking about the business in a long-term way. So he's spoken very specifically to the investment community and said, look, if you believe in us in the long term, you should invest in Unilever. We're not focused on the typical quarterly short-term results. He's been very clear about that. So they've laid out in their sustainable living plan some very, very ambitious goals for the company and their overall sustainability agenda. And I believe the number is 2 billion people a day use Unilever products. So they really, at scale, can have a significant impact. So I think they're a really interesting example. I think similarly, again, sort of large global companies, I think General Electric is a really interesting example. The eco-imagination effort is not just a marketing and communications effort. It's driving their entire R&D agenda, their innovation agenda, their business growth agenda. So I think that's a really, really interesting, serious, and rigorous example where there's a recognition that sustainability can be a driver for innovation. I think another great example is Nike. Nike is a company that for 30 years has been focused on innovation. They now get that the idea of sustainability is a lens through which they can innovate. It can be a driver of innovation, and they get that it's relevant in terms of their overall brand image and their relationship with their consumer audience. And then I think there's a lot of interesting early stage companies. Of course, I think Recyclebank is a great example. But we're here in the Bay Area, and just the whole sort of emerging space around mesh-based companies and the concept of the access economy versus an economy based on ownership. So companies like Relay Rides or Zimride in the transportation space. Zipcar is obviously the most obvious example in that space. But that whole arena, that idea of, why do I need to own all these things if they can be shared? I think that's a really interesting emerging example.